Yes.
Fine. Got it. Okay, great.
Dear Earthmates, in this episode of our Earth Civilization Dialogues, we are visiting Judyth Hill from Mexico or Mexico. Buenos dias, and thank you so much for hosting us.
Buenos dias. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you. And you are a poet, first of all, and also an activist, teacher, president of San Miguel Pen Center, and you're an inspiration with your presence. A composer friend of mine, also an orchestra director, Selman Ada, once told me to mention the action de présence, speaking French. An orchestra conductor, the way that person stands should be conveying message. And you, with your presence, keep shining and giving wonderful messages to all.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite the rabble rouser. I've been this way my whole life.
Wonderful. You are foremost a poet, and how did your love with poetry begin?
I've loved poetry my whole life, and because I'm a teacher, and I am a teacher because of this, so it sort of feeds into it. I started writing poems when I was 8 years old. My mother had brought us up reading to us, Dr. Seuss. So, and then all sorts of those long American narrative poems, Charge of the Light, well, British and American, Charge of the Light Brigade, Paul Revere's Ride, oh Lord, The Highwayman, all that stuff. But I just grew up with sort of iambic pentameter and a longing for words. And I started writing when I was 8, and I wrote rhymed iambic pentameter poems, and I never stopped. And when I was in 3rd grade, my teacher saw my first poem I ever wrote. I turned it in because in those days, all children wrote poems, all children played a musical instrument, all children painted, all children danced. It wasn't an art, it was what you did. Everyone did it. And to me, that would be truly, to return to that in education would be the greatest benefit we could have for the entire planet. Because the fact that artists are somehow separate from other people has wounded us as a species. It's wounded us. It's ridiculous. But anyway, here I was, and I turn in my little poem in 3rd grade, and she looks at it and she says, "Did your mother write this?" And I thought, oh, this must be good. I better keep doing this. So that was it. I mean, I just signed on, and I was very lucky. My mother would say to me, I'd say, "I'm going to be a writer and a poet and an actress when I grow up." And she would say, "Yes, yes, you are," instead of, "No, get a job." No, my mother actually said to me, "Don't learn to type. You will be some man's secretary." So I had a lot of encouragement to be who I was. And then when I got to high school, it was the time of the Vietnam War. And it lit a fire in me it lit a fire in me. I found out about Cesar Chavez and the Great Boycott. And that changed my life. I was 14 years old. I went down to the UFWOC, which is United Farm Workers Organizing Committee office, 14 years old, and I said, "I want to organize for the boycott, the Great Boycott." And they were like, "Sure." And they gave me an office in the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. And, at this point I was studying the IWW, Big Bill Haywood. I was on fire for how we were going to change America. And I began organizing picket lines all over Manhattan as a kid, but I didn't think I was a kid. My nickname in high school was La Passionara because anything I thought I could do, I just did. I never thought, oh, I can't do it. No, it was like, no, we're going to do this thing. I met Cesar Chavez. He shook my hand and thanked me. I went to all the demonstrations in Washington. And when I moved to San Miguel and they asked me to be president of Penn, I was like, yes, this is what I do. This is what I do. I want to be a voice. I want to be a voice for those who don't have a voice. One of the big things that doesn't have a voice in our world is our planet. So that's my beat.
Wow.
That's my work.
Yes, yes. And so you were already an activist poet in childhood. Wonderful. And who did you enjoy reading?
Well, as a child, the first real poetry book that I ever got when I was like 10 years old or something was T.S. Eliot. And I think that was tremendously useful because from Eliot you see Pound, and from Pound you get to the Golden Bough and mythology. And then in 8th grade, I read Joseph Campbell, Hero with a Thousand Faces. And that that was like, this is it. This is how I understand the world. What is connected to what very deeply and in literarily, mythologically, biologically, planetarily. And I began to just look for connections all the time. And that's how I teach. And that's how I write. And the other thing we read that was very formative was the book God's Graves and Scholars. And that was about archaeology and the digs. And it just, somehow those two books were my most formative books of sort of going, oh, this is what I want to learn. This is what I want to find out. I had a global understanding from the time I was extremely young because of just my passion to learn and to make connections. And I understand that that is the way my mind works, and that's how my writing is. But here's the hugely formative thing, and I want to talk about this. When I was in my 20s, I met a woman. This woman's name is Dolores LaChapelle. Dolores LaChapelle, my friend Art Goodtimes created a situation, a poetry conference, or, well, it was much more wild than that because we did it all around the fire reading poetry. But it was so that so the poets could study with Dolores LaChapelle, who was a deep ecologist, and Jerome Rothenberg, who was at that time the first person to really look at global poetry anciently. And from that, I began to really understand the shamanic origins of poetry as being a sort of a way station between how we talk to this world and the world speaks back to us, how we speak back into the mystery and the mystery speaks back into us. And this was hugely important to my understanding. And Dolores said to all of us, become the bard of your place. Learn your place. Know what grasses grow when. Know what flowers start in spring so that when the certain birds don't come, you know. Learn your place and sing your place. And that really being the bard of my place, and then understanding that it's both granular and huge. It's important that I understand here, my place in Colorado. When I lived in San Miguel, those 10 years, it was very important that I knew the flowers, the names of the trees, that I learned all those things there. Wherever I am, I learn my place. I become a student of my place. But then my place is also this world, so that I have to be concerned with both the smallest detail, when do the elks come? What are they like in the fall here? And also the biggest, which, climate crisis. So that's really that was, I would say, after becoming a poet, it was sort of like Dolores sort of wound me up and say, walk that way. And I did.
Great. And I like the title of that book, Earth Wisdom. It's wonderful, yes. And if it has not been translated into Turkish, it should be.
It should be. Now, this is her big book. Dolores is the person who is really, she's one of the great minds. When you Google her, you'll really be astounded by what she added to what we know. This book is Sacred Land, Sacred Sex, Rapture of the Deep, concerning deep ecology and celebrating life. And this is like, she's like the Joseph Campbell of the natural world. This is like an encyclopedia.
Wonderful. And she's, yes, this our Earth Civilization Network certainly needs people like her, her works.
We need a bibliography, because there's really been, and there is, incredible work being done in this. And right now, the Braiding Sweetgrass, do you know that book? Robin McKemmerer, do you know that book? Oh, you know what? I should make us a reading list. There's incredible stuff being written right now. We are really on the forefront. Rupert Sheldrake's son, Merlin Sheldrake, his book. There's just so much being written to sort of bring us into an awareness of being planetary Panagean beings. Wonderful. And this is really important. This is where we have to be.
Exactly. Mentioning connections, one of my favorite books is Connectivity. That's the title. I don't recall the author, unfortunately. It's one of the new books, but it's with the same approach, let's say. Before our recording today, you mentioned that you usually wake up early. I want to ask you how you write. I mean, is there a specific time and place? Do you need certain conditions or whatever? Do you use directly the computer, or do you use with a pen or a pencil? What kind of sheets do you use? Do you know, etc.
It's a great question. My favorite question.
Yeah, because it's the excitement, yes.
I'm running to go get my journal to show you.
Yeah.
All right. I really what I love is sort of a first thing in the morning, cup of coffee, go to my chair where I look out, I see the trees, the birds are coming. I always have the door open, even when it's like 30 degrees. I just put clothes on because I'm in Colorado, it's cold here. And what I do is I have a little habit, and the habit is I light a candle. And the candle is my cue. And then I open my journal. I like graph paper. I don't like white paper. It's too zen and pure. Why would it need me? It's already perfect. I don't like line paper because it's lines. I mean, who wants lines? I don't want lines. But I like graph paper because I can ignore it, but yet something's already happened. So I don't feel like I'm interrupting anything. And I do a lot of work to prepare a journal. I think to myself, what's going on in my life, what's going on in the world. I do a big collage on it, and then I paste in a million different poems that I want to read, that I want to teach from. And then I just start writing when I light the candle in the morning, and I just go. And I don't read it again for a long time. I just go. And next morning I get up, I turn the page. I very rarely read it until the whole journal is full. And then a journal for me is a chunk of time. And then when it's done, I take it and I read through it, and I mark things that should be typed up, and I type those up. Now, sometimes I'll write something and I'll go, oh. And this is exactly what I say, Tarık. I say, even when I'm alone, I say this. I go, oh, I wrote something. That's my English for ooh. And I get that feeling. It's like, oh, I wrote something. And I wrote something. And when I wrote something, then I go type it right away. Because, oh my gosh, I got to get to work on this. Something just really came. So basically, I write. I don't worry about what I write, but then something comes in, and then I type that. otherwise also. Sometimes we're called to write something. When the towers fell, that was a moment. I was on the phone. I remember someone saying to me, Bush is going to declare war. I was like, oh my God, that's insane. We have to wage peace. We can't do that. And I went, oh, I got to get off the phone, because I felt this poem just coming into my brain. And the poem was Wage Peace. And I sat down and I wrote it. And that poem is all over the world. If you Google those words, this poem just went everywhere. And not always with my name on it, but there it is. I mean, that's a bardic moment of being called. And I kind of call it the ambush. You get ambushed. So there's a lot of different ways we come to the page. There's the ambush where you're like, oh, gotta write this thing. And then there's the mule. It's just your work. You put it on, you go do it. You just go do it. And when you go do it in that sort of, this is my work, this is what I do, then the muse visits you, because she's very good to people who sit and do their work every day.
Yes, the muse likes industrious people. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, many talented young people, they unfortunately try to arrive at the best outcome right at the beginning, skipping all the fun transition and development and crises, etc., all those of the adventure, actually. But writing, I think a writer, if a person becomes a writer in general, including poetry, let's say, if one enjoys adventure, then if I know what I'm going to write, I don't write it, because
right, exactly.
I would be bored. What am I going to write? What a great adventure. And yes.
That's the most important thing, what you just said. The most important thing for all writers is to get addicted to not knowing. Fall in love with what you don't know, because what you don't know is where revelation comes. And every time you sit down especially for poets write things about what they know. That should be an essay. That is not poetry. Whenever I read it, I'm like, oh my God, there's well, Frost said this. Robert Frost said, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. I have a photo next to Frost's grave. I lay down next to his grave, close my eyes with my pen, and then my wife took my photo. It's one of my favorites. So getting used to the idea, and next to Frost, but I didn't know that. Yes.
His diaries are really important. His diaries. I mean, he was not a pleasant human being, and he did a lot of horrific things to his family. But I mean, he's not the only poet whose life does not quite live up to all the great things he said. But that doesn't take away. It doesn't take away from the work. And for writers, his diaries are very instructive. He really his. I mean, when you think about Frost and Emily Dickinson and people who blew up the iambic pentameter line, blew it up and yet held it. To me, this is all the Dharma. This is our Dharma. We come in, when I write poems today, I have a incredible centuries and centuries of great poets going back to people sitting around a fire, chanting with bones. And I mean, this is our Dharma, and to learn as much as we can for every writer to inhabit that and learn the poetry of other countries, of other times, of other places. That's the work. And, there's so much that way. To me, I'm holding the hands of all the great ones and I'm giving it forward. When I teach, I am teaching. I'm like, you have to read Machado. You have to read Lorca. You've got to read, what's it? Hikmet Natim. If you do not read him, you're missing something. You're missing something. We have to read Mirabai and Rumi. We have to read that work. We have to read all over the world, Mallarmé and Baudelaire. We have to read that work so we know it's been done. So then we add something, put something in the bank for the next poet.
Exactly. And yesterday I was reading this book on the critique of capitalism, summarizing much misunderstood Marx approach, and there the difference between live labor and dead labor. Live labor is what we do, what we bring, but we don't do it in nihilo. We have all the previous labor products we are using. So exactly what you just said, we have a great heritage, embrace the heritage. And one of the mistakes usually young, talented people, again, writers do is they don't want to be influenced. But
right.
That is a mistake. Come on, be influenced.
Yeah, be influenced.
Be influenced. And then don't be afraid of writing badly. Don't be afraid of writing nonsense. Juggle with words. Write badly. Write nonsense.
Oh, I love it.
Yes. And when I'm invited to a creative writing seminar or workshop, whatever, in a high school, there were a few teachers and there were about 20 students. I said, don't read many books. There was silence, cold. Now the students, their eyes had, I said, read as few books as possible. The teachers were alarmed and the students, their eyes were, open. And I added 5,000 books, for example. One shouldn't read less than 5,000 books. Anyway, and then the teachers, and I also said, there is a bad piece of advice, which says, to me, it is not good, it's bad. First read, then write. No, I say it's the contrary. First write so that you can read better. And I ask, can you be a swimmer by watching the swimming races on television? No, you've got to go into the water, etc. And then even those few ideas can cause lots of changes because the hegemonic approach is unfortunately dull and boring.
Deeply. Yes, I love that. Leonard Cohen said, forget your perfect offering. That's really important.
Yes. And by the way, how about languages? Your interest in languages, let's say.
I'm interested, but I'm pathetic at languages. I learned to say hello, goodbye, thank you, and can I have butter with that? And that's about it.
That's good enough, I think. I mean, what else would one need? The other are already international. If you need a doctor, you say doctor, and people would understand wherever you are.
It turns out that I have this very sort of, I don't know, sort of a rubbery capability. When I get to a country, I learn to have as good an accent as possible to say the very few words I know and just act like, and the thing is, I do have this bizarre capability that if I get really quiet, someone can speak to me in another language and I can understand what they're saying. And if I stay somewhere long enough, I will get the language. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's a poetic capability. I can open my mind and I can be completely present with what someone's saying. And somehow through cues of their eyes, the music of it, and some sort of interpersonal vibrational thing that's happening, I can understand things. I mean, I think being an intuitive is part of what you develop as an artist. You have to, you must. And it's not mysterious. It's not woo-woo. It's just another, imagination is like eyesight and hearing. it's something you have and you can develop it. You can get better at it.
I agree. English and Spanish?
Yes, but not very great Spanish, and some French, and a little Slovene, because I go there every year. I love Slovenia.
Wonderful.
And I kind of want to go everywhere. I'm going to Helsinki in 2 weeks. So by then I'll know how to say hello, thank you, and can I have butter on that? And where is the sauna? I think I'll learn that sentence too.
And how about Mexico? Your relationship, let's say?
All my life, when I got married, when I was in my 20s and I got married. My husband and I spent a year just driving all over Mexico, Guatemala, and Belize. And I thought to myself, I want to live here. This is where I want to live. Someday I'm going to live here. And I did. I moved to San Miguel in 2010 and I lived there for 10 years. And it's a heart home for me. I grew up in New York City, but when I graduated college, again, it was like I I I want to live where white people are the minority. So I moved to New Mexico, which is almost like not even America because it's Native American, Hispanic, and white culture, but the Anglos are the minority. And everything you have to have Spanish to live there well. And the pueblos are there, and the food is not American food. It's not white people. It's not white people culture. And I always knew that I wanted to live that way. It's just part of what I wanted in my life. And when I moved down to San Miguel, it's like I'm home. I love it here. I love the people and I love the landscape. I love the land. I love high desert. I don't live in high desert now, but I go back every year for a couple months.
So there is this expression, Mexican American. So you're American Mexican? Can we say it?
I don't know. No, I would say I don't know. Ugh.
These words.
America is such a disgrace right now. It's
Yeah.
really hideous to have to say that I am American, but I'm American in the sense that I'm quite devoted to changing America.
Yeah.
But my allegiance is global. My allegiance is
Yeah.
really
Same here.
is global, and my allegiance is to the trees and the grass and the winds and the waters and to how we can help people on this earth not be starving, which is insane because there's enough food. So, my allegiance is, I fly many flags.
That's why I enjoy saying Earthmates. And I actually refrain from names of countries. I mean, unless I have to mention some country name, I prefer not to mention this or that country. A person is important. And today, the name of a country hardly gives any clue about a person anyway. We're so intercultural. Or anyway, each individual is intercultural today. I mean, it doesn't have to be two bodies, one body in one body. We are, each of us is intercultural. And by the way, one of the terms I like is glocal, joining global and local. I love it, glocal.
That's nice.
In Kazakhstan, there was this wonderful writers conference, and I was invited by the Kazakh Pen Center, and the topic was globalization and globality and local literatures or national literatures. I said, why this dilemma? Why not global? And you are here and you are everywhere, as you just mentioned. I agree with you. This is, and so regarding Ukraine, for example, I think it is legitimate to say they are bombing our towns, not the towns of the Ukrainians. They are bombing our towns. All the towns on this earth are our towns. All the rivers are our rivers, etc. Then we can move beyond we are helping them, let's help them. No, we are helping ourselves. We need to help ourselves better. And that's synergy. I like that word.
Yes.
Who are some of the poets today? Some of the poets you would recommend?
Well, right now I am reading a lot of what am I reading? Right now I'm reading a lot of Ukrainian poetry.
Yes.
Because that for me is a way of entering and being part of what's going on with their culture. And this is a brilliant and amazing book by Arena Shuvalova, and it's called Pray to the Empty Wells.
Oh.
And this book, Lublia Yakimchuk, Apricots of Donbass. And so I'm basically, that's what I'm reading is Ukrainian poetry, and this new poems from Ukraine, which is called Words for War, and it's just all kinds of different poets. And they're phenomenal. I mean, this is so, to me, you know, for me to be entering this war as an objector and a supporter of Ukraine, I felt like the most important thing was to sort of immerse in the culture from what I love and understand best. And what I love and understand best is poetry. So that's really what I'm reading. And I'm studying, because this is the other thing. You know, these are all modern Ukrainian poets, but it's really important for all of us as we try to move out of our sort of country-centric consciousness, both culturally and geographically. Ukrainian poets did not start writing poetry yesterday. They have this long and interesting and sort of radiant history of poetry as every other culture. So I am reading Shevchenko, who is called the Kobzar, who is sort of the father of Ukrainian poetry, if you will. I mean, one of them, he's one of the main ones, and sort of reading my way through Ukrainian poetry history. And that's what I'm reading these days. And I mean, I just, you know, yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. But I also just bought this. Somehow I read about a book called Dark Matter by a current Swedish poet. And the language is so odd. I thought to myself, this is really going to tweak me. This will change me. This will change my work. And because she's using language in a completely different way, she's writing about things that I don't have any comprehension. I mean, it's just the wildest stuff. And the book is called Dark Matter. And I got it yesterday. And I was like, oh my God, this is fabulous. I got to teach this. The minute I read something and I love it, I'm like, I got to teach this. And then this morning, I read this American Armenian poet that just, I've got to find his work. It's absolutely incredible, this poem. And what was this? Kate, let me find this. All right, here's this poem. Do you want to hear a poem?
And I'd love to hear a poem by you.
Oh, by me? Okay.
Wage Peace, for example.
Oh yeah, I could read Wage Peace.
Please.
Okay. Yes. Hold on, I have to get mine.
And you are organizing a Ukrainian poetry.
Yes, on April 25th at 6 o'clock Central Daylight Time. I am producing an event, an incredible event with Vitaly Chernetsky, who is a literary and he's a scholar of Ukrainian literature, history, Russian. Well, that's also the very interesting thing. It's like, it's a little bit like the American Revolution, where all these Brits were basically fighting all these other Brits. It's like these people their DNA is extremely linked. And the fact that they're going in, it's like basically they're killing their own ancestors. It's insane. It's really insane. But anyway, there we are. Such is the way of fascism and dictators.
Exactly.
And I mean, they have to make an us and them. Without an us and them, there's no power, right? It's all about that. So that's what we're seeing there. But anyway, Vitaly Chernetsky is going to be giving post-colonial literary context. And what we've arranged, and it's thrilling, is I have 3 current phenomenal Ukrainian poets, young women, all young women. One is in Lviv, one is in Kyiv, and one is teaching in China. And we're going to start, they're going to read, like Vitaly will read the poems of Shevchenko to introduce us. And then Irena Shuvalova will be reading the poems of Lesya Ukrenka, who's this phenomenal activist, wild woman poet in the 1800s. And then we're going to be, and then Stus and one other poet. And then all with conversation, really talking about, what was going on in Ukraine while these different poets were writing, because they're all, in a way, every poet is sort of an activist poet to a certain extent, if their eyes are open and their hearts are open. And then they're each going to read their own work. So that's what's going to happen. So it's going to be a literary, historical, poetry event for us all to learn about Ukrainian poetry from history and currently. And we're raising money for the World Central Kitchen, which has fed over 4 million people so far fleeing Ukraine. And in Ukraine, one of their kitchens was just bombed, and we've already raised $1,000. So, it's not everything, but that's another thing. I had a wonderful poet friend who said to me, you can't do everything, but you can do something. Figure out your something. Don't be like, oh, I can't do, it's too much. No, everyone can do something. And that's my story in my life, is I just go, well, what can I do? Would I love to go cook with World Central Kitchen? Yes. I have been a cook my whole life. I had a bakery for 12 years. I'm a professional baker. But does it matter for me to go there and cook right now? No. Better I stay here and do this. I can do this work here. So that's all. And I can write poems. That's what I can do. So that's what I'm doing. So that's my event. So Wage Peace. Okay, so do you want to hear Wage Peace?
Yes, please.
The end of that? All right. Wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble. Breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Breathe in terrorists and breathe out sleeping children and freshly mown fields. Breathe in confusion and breathe out maple trees in color. Breathe in the fallen and breathe out lifelong friendships intact. Wage peace with your listening, hearing sirens, pray loud. Remember your tools, flower seeds, clothespins, clean rivers. Make soup, play music, memorize the words for thank you in 3 languages. Learn to knit and make a hat. Think of chaos as dancing raspberries. Imagine grief as the outbreath of beauty or the gesture of fish. Swim for the other side. Wage peace. Never has the world seemed so fresh and precious. Have a cup of tea and rejoice. Act as if armistice has already arrived. Celebrate today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And
Pleasure.
This wonderful poem is like a finale of our conversation in a way. I mean, what else can be said? I don't know. I'm speechless. Thank you so much.
Well, I would ask a gift. Could I ask a gift?
Please do.
I would love to have Wage Peace in Turkish.
Oh, yes, I'll be honored to translate it. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was going to mention that.
Oh, yay. Because that's a big gift we can give each other, is put our poems into other languages.
True. How true. Yes. And any suggestions to young Earthmates?
Well, I love what you said about read. Read, read, read. Read. Read other, if you, whatever your work is, if you're a painter, go look at other paintings. If you're, go look at your ancestral, at the ancestors in whatever your art form, whatever your work is. Be part of the big, huge, transformative energy to the good that is in this world. And understand your place. Every single one of us is an immigrant. My teacher, Martine Prechtel, said, everyone has moved somebody and everybody has been moved. There is not one of us on the planet, except for maybe the Hopi people and some of the Pueblo people and the Aboriginal people who are in their original place. For me, I understand that Colorado, I'm on the land of the Southern Ute people. This is not white people land. This is land that we moved in and took. And that's an important thing. If everyone would just begin to understand, learn the real history of your place. Learn your own history of where you came from, because that's another piece. My teacher, Martine, now I've always wished I could do this, Tarık, but I never did. But he said, all of us should learn the language of our ancestral enemy. All of us should read and learn about our ancestral enemy, because all of us, we've all got to understand that we've all been the oppressor, we've all been the oppressed. And then when we can do that, we can let that stuff go, that stupid human stuff, and start taking care of this planet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're together.
I know. It's great. I'm so glad we met.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, dear Judyth Hill. Yes.
Thank you, Tarık. See you at our next meeting, whatever
Yes.
we're doing.
Great.
Hasta luego.